And then we got the big news of today, which is about this unfamiliar character. I guess he's probably familiar by now. And if you know who he is, I know what you're thinking. I know you're giggling. His name is Pecker. His last name is Pecker. It makes every news story about him a little giggly and distracting. You know, listen, I'm 45 years old. As far as I'm concerned, that just means I'm 9 years old times 5. I get it. It's funny. His name is Pecker. That's funny. But when it comes to the pickle that Mr. Pecker has put the president in, I think it is sort of worth, letting it out. Giggle through it. Let that happen. Acknowledge that it's funny. But then you do still have to kind of soberly grapple with the fact that this guy, Mr. Pecker, has long been a really central part of Donald Trump's life, and particularly Mr. Trump's carefully managed public image. During the presidential campaign, it became desperately unsubtle. It became impossible not to notice. You could not buy a quart of milk without being confronted with the unsubtlety of this relationship. Because David Pecker's media empire includes the National Enquirer. And you can watch the progression of Donald Trump's quest for the presidency and over the course of the covers of the National Enquirer. I mean, when it came to the end of the Republican presidential primary, where the last man standing against Ted Cruz, standing against him was Ted Cruz, this was the National Enquirer cover at the end of the Republican primary. Ted Cruz's father linked to JFK assassination. Right? And that's crazy in the middle of a presidential campaign to see a supermarket tabloid trying to help their favored candidate by putting out something Looney Tunes like this about his last remaining serious primary opponent. But this was not just a Looney Tunes thing on the periphery. This was not an unwelcome intrusion into the campaign by this publication. The candidate himself was totally on board with this.
There was a picture on the front page of the National Enquirer, which does have credibility. And on the cover of the National Enquirer, there was a picture of him and crazy Lee Harvey Oswald having breakfast. This was a magazine that, frankly, in many respects, should be very respected. I mean, if that was the New York Times, they would have gotten Pulitzer Prizes for their reporting. I've always said, why didn't the National Enquirer get the Pulitzer Prize?
That's my favorite photographic imagery of Mike Pence as he's absorbing what Donald Trump is saying about the Lee Harvey Pulitzer Prize. He said Pulitzer Prize again. Donald Trump perfectly in his element talking about the National Enquirer. Mike Pence swallowing his tongue, thinking, wow, this is going to be my new life. Mother. So, thus ends the Republican presidential primary in 2016 on that high note. And thus starts the general election. In July, they've got their, the main story there obviously is their bread and butter, mean celebrity exploitation stuff, dying share, broken alone. But then you see on the side, hey, some politics. There's Trump, how I will save America from terror. Following week, this is very subtle, Hillary Clinton, corrupt, on the take, fraud and bribes, crooked Hillary. Where have I heard that phrase, crooked Hillary, before? 2 weeks later, Hillary failed secret FBI lie detector. New email scandal bombshell. Damning report inside the shocking bribe. Here's August 15th, 2016. Donald Trump's revenge on Hillary and her puppets. Who are her puppets? Barack Obama is apparently one of her puppets. That's interesting. Mob connections, shady billion-dollar deals, gay double life. It's a little weird how they put the mob connections bullet point right under Donald Trump on this cover, but I'm quite sure from the context they mean to imply that the mob stuff and the gay stuff and these shady billion-dollar deals, those are all things you're supposed to attribute to Hillary Clinton. Here's the following week. Again, very subtle. Clinton's secret health crisis, mental breakdown, eating herself to death, and Bill Clinton has Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. By mid-September, the National Enquirer reports that it has obtained Hillary Clinton's full medical file. They also found that nice picture of her to accompany that headline. In her medical file, according to the National Enquirer, there's news of her violent rages, her liver damage from booze, 3 strokes, and also Alzheimer's. Then down at the bottom, not sure if this is directly derived from the medical file, but Jail Clinton now. It's also there on the front page. Right before the election, this was the National Enquirer's Halloween special. Explosive story that will change the election. 24 years of cover-ups and crimes exposed. Hillary hitman tells all. Smoking gun proof that Hillary paid hush money to hookers? Wait, hush money? Who now? Who now did that? This was the following week. Part 2 of Clinton's hitman explosive tell-all. Hillary hooked on narcotics? Also, gay sex sting. Something involving Hillary being gay in a motel. Hillary blackmailed the FBI. Not blackmailed by the FBI, but she blackmailed the FBI. That's a number. Then there was their election special. This was their masterpiece. This was on the newsstands in basically every grocery store in America when Americans went to the polls for Election Day. They really boiled it down for the final push. Hillary, corrupt, racist, criminal. Look at the middle section on the bottom there. Hillary uses the N-word and hates black people. That's in every grocery store in America, right? And even if you don't buy it, that's the cover. And then Trump wins the election, and the Enquirer's cover takes a remarkably sunny turn. This was their first post-election cover. We told you so. Donald Trump, my first 100 days. My plan to ensure world peace. And then week after week, it was just more of the same. Illegals caught invading America, but President-elect's construction plans and blueprints inside, because Trump must build the wall. Even before he was sworn in, Trump was able to expose the Muslim spies in Obama's CIA. They were infesting Obama's CIA. Still, before he was even sworn in, Merry Christmas, Christmas Eve, the Enquirer was trumpeting that Bill Clinton is down to 117 pounds and dying. One of the Obama daughters has hit rock bottom. That's classy. And Trump has taken charge. Again, this is still during the transition, but he's taken charge. He's tearing up dangerous deals. He's arranged peace between Israel and its enemies. He's slapped down arrogant China. And then this is how they started the new year, 2017. A glamour shot of America's new first family inside Trump's White House. This is not just a pro-Donald Trump publication. This is not like Fox News. This is like Fox News on drugs, right? But David Pecker, who runs the National Enquirer, who runs the media entity that controls the National Enquirer, he has been on this train for a long time. In the late 1990s, David Pecker ran a magazine that was literally called Trump Style. Just a whole magazine about Trump and style and Trump stylishness. As long ago as 2010, the Associated Press reports that David Pecker had promoted a possible Trump presidency. And you know, maybe David Pecker just loves Donald Trump. That is no crime. But if that's what it is a very deep and long-standing love. The Washington Post reports that during the 2016 campaign, Pecker allowed Donald Trump to personally direct and select stories like these ones, Hillary's 6 months to live and Hillary's full medical file, for the cover of the Enquirer. Trump got to pick those and dictate those. The Wall Street Journal, also in a remarkable series of reporting over months, pieced together the finances behind Pecker and his company buying up exclusive rights to damaging stories about Donald Trump's sex life, so those stories would be kept quiet before the campaign. Scandal turned up in that reporting has now turned into criminal consequences with guilty pleas from Trump lawyer Michael Cohen this week. Cohen pled guilty to making illegal payments to influence the campaign at the direction of Donald Trump and in conjunction with David Pecker and Pecker's company, American Media. The criminal information in Cohen's case also says that as early as the summer of 2015, Pecker coordinated with Cohen and with one or more members of the Donald Trump campaign to develop a system in which Pecker and the National Enquirer would assist the campaign in identifying and neutralizing negative stories about Trump. So there's all sorts of interesting questions as to whether or not American media, as an entity, might get in trouble now that they've been named as a participant in that criminal conspiracy. The company itself. There's lots of interesting questions about the Trump organization, the Trump business having been involved in that scheme, people on the Trump campaign having been involved in that scheme, the president himself directly described by Cohen under oath in court as directing and participating in that criminal scheme. But today, first Vanity Fair and then the Wall Street Journal reported that David Pecker and his chief content officer, his top editor, a man named Dylan Howard, they have both now flipped and are cooperating with the special counsel's office. Pecker said to have immunity in exchange for his cooperation. David Pecker is not a random or peripheral figure in the president's life. This is This is probably the president's greatest ally in building his public image over the last couple of decades. This is the guy, this is the company that specifically has managed Trump's public image, in part by aggressively managing secrets that Trump believed would be most damaging to him if they were publicly exposed. And now that is who is talking to federal prosecutors. And once you're cooperating with federal prosecutors, you don't just get to tell tales about, Michael Cohen. You don't get to choose any one thing that you're going to cooperate about. Once you're cooperating, particularly if you've been given immunity in exchange for your cooperation, you're cooperating on everything, which in this case may turn out to be fascinating. Once Trump was elected president, I just want to note here for the record, the National Enquirer and American media took a few really strange little turns, including this spring when they published this. This is a big glossy publication. It has no advertisements. It is priced at $13.99. It was put on the shelf at Walmarts around America. It's basically a mash book declaring the awesomeness of Saudi Arabia and the hunkiness of its new crown prince. This thing literally describes Saudi Arabia as the Magic Kingdom. Throughout the book, that's how Saudi Arabia is described. Magic Kingdom. Disney might have something to say about that. This AMI publication from earlier this year includes this photo of this odd duck guy in the Oval Office posing with Donald Trump behind the Resolute desk. This guy is an advisor to the Saudi Crown Prince. He reportedly got into the Oval Office at the invitation of David Pecker from American media. What the heck is the National Enquirer doing promoting the interests of Saudi Arabia and its crown prince to unsuspecting Walmart shoppers all over America, and something on which they must have lost a gazillion dollars? And what does that have to do with them getting Saudi interests into the Oval Office to meet with the president? Again, once you are cooperating with federal prosecutors, you don't get to pick and choose what it is you're cooperating about. It's everything. And now, tonight, the Associated Press has just reported that at the National Enquirer, at American media, turns out they kept all their best stuff, including all their best Trump stuff, locked up in a safe that everybody knew about. That story is just broken. We've got the reporter who broke it next.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.